Hey.
What's up?
How are you?
I'm doing so good.
So this is Inez McDonald. I've got Jenn Gray here, who is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful friend of mine. And we're just going to be chatting, flowing, I guess, talking about how we've been backstabbed.
Dun, 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 dun.
Backstabbed by just being in church, but when we really wanted to find who God was, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I'm super pumped to have this conversation with you.
Yes.
I think it's really awesome. Just backstory, we got to know each other and just in a business meeting. And as we got to know each other, we saw that there was definitely a lot of similarities in our spiritual journey.
Yes.
And we'll cut to the chase, but then we'll back it all up that this is a conversation of hope, and this is a conversation of so much goodness out of so much pain. But my journey with church, I grew up as a good old Southern Baptist. I was at the church every time the doors were open.
Amen.
All the things, Sunday morning church, Sunday night, Wednesday night, all of it. And I loved it. I think church was like a safe haven for me. I had a very tumultuous childhood. I had an alcoholic father, and what that looked like, he was very abusive to my mom, and so I was more of a third parent than I was ever a child, so that felt like a place that I really belonged and was cared for. So fast forward, I graduated college. It was actually my first job, so I went to college to be a girls ministry director. Long story short, I think culture is changed, and so typically there's only been a male in leadership with youth ministry, and I saw a need for a female to represent that. So I jumped on in there, became a secretary. That's a whole other story, and because they weren't quite ready to see me as the leader that I wanted to be, but I just went with it. And then fast forward, I ultimately 15 years later, had the position that I dreamed of, leading over 500 students, hosting events for girls and all that. So church for me wasn't just a place that I went. It's literally
A lifestyle.
Especially this church. I mean, they were my family. This is people I did life, all the things with. I have 4 kids, so my kids, grew. Ultimately then went there and all the things. And so that's my journey with church and, as far as, my involvement and all that.
Yeah. So for myself, I found similarity in that as well, because I grew up in church myself. Went to church every Sunday, went to all the Easter egg hunts growing up.
Right.
There was even a family that had a cute little Christmas tree farm that everybody in the church would go to at Christmas time. And we cut down real trees. Lots of great memories. Even went to school at a Christian school. So I can definitely relate to that. Growing up, my kids have gone to church. But I'm more so also just interested, how did you find yourself in a place of just wondering, like, what am I doing? Am I doing this for no reason?
So my story took a little bit of a turn towards a lot of pain associated with the church in 2019. I went through a divorce. So after I had gone through the pinnacle of, like I said, I was at the peak of my career, right? Like I had the job that I wanted. I was doing what I wanted. It was massive success. And even in that personally, as my life was booming in what seemed like the right direction, it also added a major spotlight to areas of my life that weren't aligned. And so with that, I got into my own counseling. I mean, I'm here mentoring hundreds of girls a week, and my own life, I thought maybe, my dad, all those things. Well, ultimately it was my marriage. And I knew I needed a marriage to have the position. And we, there was a lot, and I'm even in that, live and you learn a whole lot. But in me removing the marriage, I lost my job. I lost everything. And I was so naive that I expected to be loved and supported and encouraged and carried and held and all the things. And I knew that it was going to be hard for my 4 kids. I genuinely did not believe that I would lose my job. I thought that these were my people. They're going to help me through the hardest, most devastating season of my life. And it wasn't like that. I overnight went from being an asset to a liability. at the church, and their alignment with me and divorce. And I'm not here to be a proponent of divorce. Nobody gets married and wants a divorce, right? So that's
right.
But in that,
but it's your journey too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that was something that was so heartbreaking. Is my story? It wasn't trusted through my own mouth. They wanted to take it through their own lens when they'd never walked a day in my shoes. I had an amazing leader from the church literally tell me when I explained to him my divorce, he said, "I can't believe you're playing those cards on the table," as if I was using something. I'm like, isn't it crazy to imagine that that's actually, I lived those cards on the table. Like you've never lived that, and yet speaking such condemnation over my life that I had a huge decision to make. I could be bitter. I could stay hurt. I could say, and I will tell you, I went through all the emotions. I'm not here to say that I was like, oh, it's okay, I forgave them immediately, and it was all rainbows and sunshines.
Yeah.
It was the biggest wake-up call in my life.
Now let's talk about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we're feeling a little bitter.
Yeah.
Not even a little. You're feeling bitter. Mm-hmm. We're feeling hurt, let down. Mm-hmm. Completely opposite of what you would think the church is supposed to respond to.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I feel like there's so many people that are actually going through this, myself included. What would you say, or how would you say that you felt, and how would you want it to have been treated in that moment?
One of my favorite lines now is that everyone has a story. And the irony, as well as the event that I created for girls, was called The Table. And my whole tagline was, everyone has a seat at the table.
Amen.
And the deepest pain, I believe, was based on their reaction to me as the leader. I no longer had a seat at their table, and that was a huge pill to swallow. And so to feel like I didn't know where I belonged. I again, because it wasn't just a place that I went. It wasn't even just like a job. It wasn't like this. These were, all those things. And so to deal with the reality that I have a choice from this.
Right.
And it's almost like the closure that you'll never get. My closure is to know that no one who ever passes my life will ever be treated how I was treated. My closure is that I know you have a story, and I'm here for it.
Right.
I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to walk with you in truth. I'm here to help you. And so all of that I felt like I needed, but instead it was just the only way I could get help from him is if I decided that I wasn't going to terminate my marriage.
Right.
And,
right.
And that's, I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing based on these reasons. And so I had to make a decision of,
But don't you think it would make sense as well that it's real for those girls who you're mentoring and coaching to see that you're going through real life things that are probably happening in their families?
Yeah.
Like, why? Because just a little backstory about me, I went to a Christian school. I know that teachers were not allowed to be divorced that taught at the school. And I know that there's biblical reasons as to why people make these rules in their organizations.
Right.
And I understand that. There's no disrespect there. But why do we want kids to see something that's not real? Like, God brings us all through a journey. And if divorce is where you end up, or drug addiction is where you end up, or abuse is where you end up, why are we turning our backs on people when we have the means to be able to help them? Right. And for these young girls who may go through these things in the future, they may go through some divorce.
Right.
Like, they can say, now they've kind of gotten that taken away from them, because they could have said, well, we saw our favorite, youth pastor, Jenn, go through this really hard thing, and she made it, and she did it, and she walked with us through it while she was going through it and coaching us. So why, in your mind, why do you think people are kind of shutting that out?
That, I think, was one of the biggest missed opportunities, is the fact that I could have shown how I was clinging to Jesus in the middle of this divorce. He wasn't shunning me. He wasn't pushing me aside.
He was there, in the middle of it.
Completely carrying me through.
Yeah.
And I could have walked a whole slew of teenage girls through that.
Right.
But instead, I was told I couldn't go into certain rooms. I couldn't go into this. It was, you're not allowed here. It was literally like scarlet letter. Like, you can't arrive. You can't be in the same room. You cannot appear in any type of leadership of any sort because you're going through that. And that was probably the most hurtful thing, because for the first time in my life, I was actually honest about what was going on in my world. Yes. And what you're telling me, I literally said this to the pastor then, that you're telling me that you were okay with me lying to you every single day about the condition of my marriage and the condition of my life. But when I had the courage to step out into truth, that's no longer accepted.
Right.
And I think that as the church, we have to be careful that we're not shunning people. Like, we're not pushing people out. We can walk through and here's how I can have empathy. Just like you mentioned about the Christian school, right? Mm-hmm. There's rules.
Yeah.
Right?
There's
Absolutely.
Rules. Absolutely.
100%.
We're not saying break your rules.
There's standards, there's things like that. And
right.
But I also think that they're in the middle of the rules, if we lose relationship and love and genuine care for people,
right,
we've lost the whole heart of why there is even a church in the first place.
Right.
And that was one of the hardest things that I had to deal with was, so I was only accepted, even like as a person,
right,
if I had an MRS in front of my name and I stayed with my marriage. Like, that was, I didn't realize I had a ticket to belong here. I thought my ticket was the fact that I have a heartbeat and breath in my lungs. And when I found out that it took a little bit more to be loved and accepted, and that was very hard. I mean, very hard.
Yeah, I completely agree, because it's almost like, so many people say the government sees us as a number. Mm-hmm. Now we're working with people that we walk with in life, mm-hmm. that we've been through things we've grown up around in life,
right,
that are now saying to you, oh, well, you're a number. Mm-hmm. You're a number. Mm-hmm. You can't go through these real life things and us come beside you and accept you and walk with you and pray with you, mm-hmm. even if it means you can't be here anymore.
Right.
There's no support.
Right.
There's no resources. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. But I will say, to come full circle, right. I think that in my particular situation, right. there were, and a lot of that too, I was a people pleaser. So I had zero enemies in my life. Everybody loved Jenn. There was nobody who didn't like Jenn. Now all of a sudden I'm and now which one doesn't belong? And so that was some of my own identity of figuring out, okay, how do I ruffle feathers and still, so there's a lot of, personal growth in that too.
Yeah.
But on the other side, now I'm 5 years out from that situation.
Yeah.
And so many of those relationships have been restored.
Oh, that's
because
amazing.
There's empathy on both sides.
Yes.
And the way I can understand it too is that the church had never experienced anything. No one at my level had gone through what I went through.
Right.
There wasn't a protocol.
How to handle it.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And so then, yes, can I get very black and white and be like, well, there's 150 ways you could have handled it. Probably wouldn't have chose the one you did.
Right.
But I can have empathy in that you didn't know what to do. I know that you have a mega church that you were trying to protect, right. and in your mind, protection looked like this.
Right.
And I can empathize with that. So that was growth on my end, and there's a growth in a lot of people's hearts too, and forgiveness and healing and understanding. And the thing is, I think we just have to keep communication lines open. And when we desire genuine forgiveness and genuine relationships, we have to stop having these things that are like, oh, boom, cut it off.
Right.
Because so many people, that's why we're here even talking about this, because so many people have had something happen to them, have made a choice or done something to where there has been that fence gate completely cut off. Yep. And then you're like, wait, but I have the heartbeat and I have a soul, and why do I need anything more to be welcomed and to be accepted? And my encouragement to anyone listening is, if you have gone through hard things, you cannot let the pain of people keep you from the love of God. And you cannot let the pain of people jade and harden your heart. Right. And that's what I've prayed over and over again. I'm like, God, even though I've been hurt, I understand hurt people hurt people. Right. And in my hurt, I hurt a whole bunch of people. And in other people's hurt. I've been hurt a whole lot of times. But when he says 70 times 7 and grace after grace, then I want to be that person to give that. And I can't control what anybody else does. But I will also be mindful. And the closure for my own self is to find a church. There's no perfect church, but find people that I can be all me and I'm loved all as me. Because they are out there.
Yes.
Right? And so to look for that instead of being like, oh, church must not be for me.
Yes.
Say, maybe this isn't the best fit for me.
Right.
But not giving up on the church as a whole.
Yes.
But being real with yourself, like honoring your own heart and your own emotions and your own safety and boundaries and all that, and to find the church that aligns with you and that fits with your family and and all that. But.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree, because the reason that we're pointing out the issue and then bringing it back to how do we move forward from here isn't to bash anybody or to talk bad about anybody, but for other people who are dealing with some of the same things that we have dealt with in our journeys. You know, for me, I've been on drugs. I've, hit people when I shouldn't have hit them. I've done horrible things, right? And also in the midst of it, I've had horrible things happen to me, like just being at a Christian school and, not having the support that I thought I should have had. Right. And in that journey, I had to also grow, and I also had to mature and know that even though all of that may have happened or I did certain things to certain people, that God still loved me and was still merciful and gracious to me. And he even had, and I will say this now, that even though those things happened and I should be sitting here bitter, that's how I feel I should be. But really, should I? Because there's so many other times and moments in my life that God showed up and showed out and said, hey, look, I'm having mercy on you in this moment. So I'm going to need for you to be honest and forgiving to these other people as well that have hurt you. Right. Because I'm working on them just like I'm working on you. Just having an honest, I love that you said just having an honest conversation and having communication with people that have hurt you, because there's people that I know for myself that I've held on to emotions about certain things that they've done, and I've had to go back and say, hey, you've done this to me. I've been bitter about it. I need to let this go. I'm just telling you, not to make you feel bad, not to be judging or judgmental towards you, but I'm telling you because I need healing. Right. I need myself to heal so that I can be in a better place, so that I can do what I need to do in my life. Right. And that I can be honest with myself and others. And I just feel like we've all got to do better. Right. We just got to do better. And I do agree with you, just shutting off the communication or just kicking somebody out is not the way to do it. Right. It's not the way to do it. So, and I believe that the church has the power to change how things are done and to come alongside people that are going through these things. And, I'm sure that was not that many years ago for you, but it was a few years ago. And I'm sure maybe if they had to do it again, they would have done it differently. But hopefully from this conversation that you and I are having, others that are hearing this can, heal from their trauma. Exactly. Help other people to heal as well that may have been in situations. And then also just to change how things are done and maybe have a protocol and a standard for how to handle these situations, but to allow people to see realness. Because my other thing that I was thinking about is the young girls, again, just taking it back there, that may have to go through these things later on in life. Now are they growing up with kind of a unrealistic view of how life is or life should be handled? Right. I mean, we've got to have these honest conversations and not hide things in the dark and not know if you don't know what to do, just, let's sweep it under the rug. Exactly.
And that's what broke my heart, was knowing I knew enough. I was the safe place for so many girls, and that would have ever thought they could have shared with anybody at the church what they were sharing with me, because it wasn't met with any judgment. Right. And so I know that that's a needed thing, because there's so many people where it's not that, but we need to, life happens.
Yes.
Right? And so if we don't learn how to hold someone and listen to someone and just be there in a moment, in a season, we're missing a huge opportunity. People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And sometimes we just need to show how much we care.
Yes.
And then allow the truth to, if there needs to be an awakening in their own life, but sometimes truth is just met with somebody's truth or a legalism, type of thing is met with just bah, 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 bah. And I'm like, what? Have you read the Gospels? That's just not how Jesus was. He was hanging out with tax collectors and at the well and, eating dinner with sinners. And the Pharisees are like, what the heck are you doing? And that's who he was.
Yes.
It was no, I'm loving and hang out with everybody. Yes. And again, if there's anybody to compare it to, then it would be him. But I want to share this illustration I think is so powerful, and I've never resonated so deeply with this. It's a story about a college science class, and there's a goldfish tank in the middle of the table. And the professor takes the goldfish out of the tank and puts it on the a cold table and says, I'm leaving the room. Do not touch the goldfish.
Oh my gosh.
If you do, you will fail. It was the
You're
fear of God in here, right? And people, they're like, what? This is so weird, Well, he leaves, and it's 5 minutes goes by, and the fish is flapping, doing whatever. Well, and then it just keeps going, and it's further and further. Well, then there's this girl, and it's the flaps are further and far between, and she's he's literally going to let this goldfish die.
Yeah.
People are like, but it's your grade. You're just a goldfish. Your whole grade. What are gonna happen? He was serious. And with tears in her eyes, she gets up and she goes and she puts the goldfish in. Yeah. And again goes back to her desk. And she's just in tears. And so 20 more minutes goes by and the professor comes back. And the goldfish is in there, and he freaks and goes crazy.
Oh my gosh!
And of course, she gets outed, because everyone's like, "I didn't do it, and they out her. And the professor says, "I don't care what legalism, what rules are set before you. If there are rules set before you that cause you to not go along with what your heart knows is true, you have to trust your heart over any type of black and white rule."
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so he went on to say, he's like, I cannot believe only one of you came forward and saved the goldfish, all because I threatened your grade, but you were literally willing to let this innocent animal die because you were so worried about my judgment as your leader in this class. And when I heard that, I was like, for the rest of my life,
oh my gosh,
I'm looking for the goldfish.
Yes.
That somebody else has kicked out and they've kicked down.
Yes.
And our heart that God gave us is for people and is to genuinely love and take care of people. And so if I went through all that I went through, to have eyes to be able to look for the goldfish and be able to be there and to lift them back up into the water so they can get back to swimming, then I'm like, okay, God, it was all worth it. Because my eyes were so scaled over in my own bubble, in my own little comfort zone, in my own little belief system until it was wrecked 5 years ago.
Yes.
And so in those seasons, you do get to choose. Remove the scales of your own life. Instead of worrying about how people treat you, what's really amazing is the fact we all, every single day, wake up the opportunity to impact somebody else.
Yes.
And there is no better way to get in a better space in life and to just impact someone than to actually take our eyes and look to other people.
Right.
And so then I think that it's conversations like this that come from that.
Yeah.
Right? Because you were vulnerable enough to share your story about your Christian school and your church experience.
Yeah.
And which vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
Yes.
And so being able to share your hurtful stories, but then also be able to share hope with someone that may not be able to find the hope yet.
Yes.
And that's the amazing part of this conversation is there's a lot of people that could be listening to this and they're like, heck no, I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm never going back into that. And I want to be like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. but don't let the pain of somebody else dictate the beauty of your future.
Amen.
And when you hold on to the pain of the past, even if it's somebody else and what they did to you, you are completely dimming and graying out your future because you are letting that hurt paint the whole rest of your life instead of giving it over, learning, owning what you need to own, learning what you need to learn, healing from what you need to heal from, and then paying it forward and loving people how you ultimately needed to be loved.
Yes. And I love the saying, don't let bitterness block your blessing.
Oh, that's
because
good.
it will. It will. The bitterness that you carry moving forward will block the blessings that God has for you. I mean, just like you said, Jesus came to eat with the sinners, and he came to search out the lost. Like, we're not here in the church to entertain each other.
Right.
People who are already believers. We need to go out and find those that have been rejected. Those that have been hurt and let down, and bring them back so that God can then heal them. We plant that seed in them, and then God comes behind us and heals them. So I think that's a beautiful, beautiful analogy. I mean, that story with the goldfish is...
Yeah, I'll never forget it.
I'm not going to either, because that's deep. That's actually pretty deep. So that's beautiful, Jenn, and I appreciate you for, you being vulnerable as well, and just telling your story and allowing me to chat with you. And
it was great. Hey, our pain can be our message if we allow it to be. And so that's the beauty of it, that it can all be used for good if we just let our story be used for somebody else. And so thank you for the opportunity to share that. I hope it was an encouragement to somebody listening. But either way, it was encouragement to me to be able to know you and to do life with you and grow with you. So.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much, Jenn.
You're welcome.
All righty.